everyone. Alaka'i the podcast is back for another exciting episode. Are you excited, Pim?
Yeah, I am so excited for today's episode. So, what will be our topic for today, Valerie?
Our topic for today's episode is about slang and how it differs in each generation, especially between millennials and Gen Z. And we are joined by our wonderful guest, Professor Jeffrey Maloney. And I want to introduce Professor Maloney formally. So, Jeffrey Maloney received a bachelor's degree in communications from BYU, Idaho in 2011, a master's in applied linguistics from Ohio University in 2014, and PhD in second language studies from Michigan State University in 2018. Currently, he serves as an assistant professor of English language teaching under the Faculty of Education and Social Work here at BYU-Hawaii. Jeffrey Maloney was born and raised in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, and during his free time, he enjoys traveling and playing board games, and together with his wife, Valerie, they are the parents of 3 daughters.
Thank you for being here with us today, Brother Maloney. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay, so we want to start regarding this podcast in a kind of like a fun way.
Okay.
So we wanna do like a guessing game.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be doing or like saying the Gen Z slangs.
Okay.
After that, we want you to guess it, like what it means. You will use an example, of course, but you will guess it, and then afterwards you will have to also say slangs regarding or tell us the slangs that you use in your generation. Which is, what's your generation again, Brother Maloney?
I'm a millennial.
Oh, millennial.
Yes. So, and I have to be honest, I don't know if I'm going to know a lot of Gen Z slang, so I think I'm going to do pretty bad.
Me neither.
It'll be fun, Brother Maloney. Okay.
Okay.
You want to start, Pim?
I'll start first. I think this one, I didn't know it was a slang, but I use it a lot. Ick.
Ick.
Yeah, it gives me an ick when she does that, or it gives me an ick when she says that.
I think I might know this one. Is it kind of like something that's like the one thing that really just kind of disgusts you or turns you off from something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something
Yeah.
cringe, something like that.
Yeah. It says here that it is a noun, which means a feeling of disgust towards someone or something.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay.
Right on.
That's good. That's good.
I got the first one, yeah.
First one. Okay. Let's do kind of like maybe a hard one. I don't know if it's hard for you, but let's do yap.
Yeah.
For example, time to stop yapping and get back to work.
Oh, yapping? Is that a Gen Z one?
Yeah.
Okay, because I think I've heard that and used that before as yapping. It's like talking, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm familiar with that one. Maybe I know a little bit more than I thought.
Oh,
So.
that's good for the Maloney. And how about how about the slang word bussin'?
Okay. That one, I do know that one also, but it's recent that I've heard it. And so it's like when something's like really good or like really like, I don't know, like happening or like it was just, yeah, they did a great job or something. Or if somebody really likes something, they could say it's bussin', right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where did you heard it?
So I work with, actually at church, I work with some 12 to 13, 14-year-olds, and I've heard them use it. And I think I picked it up in context when they said it. So.
Oh, that's fun. Oh, do you have a calling as well in the church?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
This one, the popular one, very like, this word is like going viral on the internet. Demure.
Demure? Can you spell it for me?
Demure. Very demure, really thoughtful, really cutesy.
I have heard that one, and that one, I mean, I've heard the word itself. I didn't know it was slang, though. So, can you use it in a sentence?
Yeah, I mean, when you see someone doing something kind or considerate to others, and you're like, oh, that's very demure.
Yeah. Like for example,
Very mindful.
oh, she's she's wearing that. It's very cutesy, very mindful, very demure. Like, do you know where that originates from, Brother Maloney?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It sounds like maybe it's changing in meaning a little bit. So the demure word is kind of being like reserved or like maybe shy a little bit, or is it the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah, but it's not something that we would use often. So maybe it's picking back up in popularity or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it. I saw this one video on TikTok where I think it originated from that. Like a TikTok video where they were like saying some stuff, and at the end they were like saying very cutesy, very mindful, very demure. And it's the same with what you said, that it kind of like originates with the meaning of being modest, reserved, and like conscious regarding your actions.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's your time now, Brother Maloney, to like test us regarding
Oh, okay.
millennial slangs.
All right. I'll tell you what kind of a word it is, and I'll say the first one is bounce.
Bounce.
Ooh.
Can you give us an example?
Example.
Yeah, it might give away the meaning, but I've got a bounce.
Oh, like you have to go?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh.
that's one that maybe is. I mean, I'm not going to make any claims as to whether or not it's actually millennial slang. I don't, but I feel like that's a slang term that I have heard in my group growing up.
Yeah. I feel like we, at some point, there are still some people, especially in our generation, that still uses that word bounce.
Yeah.
I feel like it just shows that, you know, we kind of like have the same mindset, maybe, like in different.
Yeah, maybe, or I don't know. If somebody were to walk in and say, or not walk in, but I guess because we're talking about leaving, but if they were to say, I got to bounce, like, would you kind of be like, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but maybe does that mark them as maybe being not Gen Z?
Gen Z or
I don't know. Do you think a Gen Z person would say that?
Uh,
I never
No.
really heard.
I usually, it's more like, but I personally use the word like G. Oh, I have to like, you know, go, or like, oh, G something. Like
So
that.
I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's like from here in the US. I'm not sure, but we use it more in the Philippines. Like that's when I know it. Like after I served my mission, there were like a lot of slangs that like people around me are using. So that's kind of new to me.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's always new stuff happening and new changes occurring,
Yeah.
I think. Do you want another one?
Yes, Brother Maloney. Test us more.
Okay. And again, some of these things you might know, but maybe they originated kind of with my generation. The one that comes to mind is owned or pwned. This is one.
Pond.
Yeah, this one comes from more of gamers, if that helps.
Oh, well, I'm not a gamer though.
Plone.
Pwn. Oh, well, we'll try. Pwned. Oh. Can you give us like a
Sentence. Yeah.
I'm sorry, it just sounds so. I feel so cringy, kind of saying these things out of context. But well, I would use it in reference to myself. Like I tripped and fell, so I just kind of owned myself. Like
own myself. Like own, like you own something, kind of like that.
Like,
no, it has a
your
little bit of a
fault?
different meaning. I think it comes from kind of the like gaming. It's like I owned them, meaning totally beat them.
Oh.
But then if I'm talking
Oh,
about
I never heard
myself,
that
like
one.
I just totally just like really hurt myself. Yeah, something like that.
Oh, that's a new one for me.
Yeah,
I
like in an
haven't
accident
heard
or
that.
something. Yeah, it's. Yeah, I feel so.
Yeah,
I don't want to
you
take
feel
ownership
ick.
of the use of these terms. I think, but I think.
But you feel ick, Brother Maloney.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So after we play the guessing games, that's question. Do you think slang causes miscommunication between generations, or does it bring us together?
Well, I think talking about slang can bring us together. I think we're having a good time talking about it. But that's an interesting question because I think it could potentially do both. Because I think when you think about slang and where it comes from, it's really just kind of an development of kind of informal language. Like when people are together, when they're sharing experiences, they're going to start to communicate and they might develop ways of speaking to each other. We often create, in sociolinguistics, we call it, the term is in-group, and it's the people that kind of share the same characteristics, or maybe they're this social group that age or race or, whatever that might be. And I think sometimes slang comes out of those relationships, the experiences that they share and the similar kinds of things that they see, then that language maybe brings them together. The term of bringing together maybe like a solidarity. So, but when you talk about generations and different generations, again, maybe it could be used to kind of show or demonstrate that somebody's not a part of that group. So maybe then in that sense, it might be used to divide and maybe confuse people. I don't know. Is that answering your question?
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like there were times where you just felt, oh, I didn't know those words. I kind of like have to know it so that I can be able, not exactly be included in that particular group or generation, but to at least know what they were like trying to say?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm trying to think of. I will say that I mean, as a professor at the university, sometimes I think I miss out on kind of what's popular or what's being said or anything. I ask my students oftentimes, kind of like, so what's the new slang that's being used or thrown around these days? Because things are changing so fast, especially with like social media and stuff. And I often hear a lot of new terms and things that have no idea where it's come from. And if I had no idea, I don't know what to say or how to say things, I guess. And but in terms of a situation where I felt like I had to know or understand, I can't. Maybe I'm lucky, I guess. I just haven't, or maybe I just didn't realize that I was totally an outsider or something like that. But
Maybe you can try that as part of your activity in EIL 320.
yeah, I can give that a shot.
For the term in group, is it similar to like inside joke? Is it like considered the same?
Yeah, it's kind of a similar kind of a like your in group is kind of just the people that share something. There's something socially there. There's a connection there. Versus the out group or the people would be kind of the outsiders. It's kind of a broad term, but for example, if we're talking about slang and generations, I would imagine you could say the in group there would be people of that certain age range, and then or it could be a particular social group at, for example, this university. There's different groups of friends or people of similar backgrounds that share something that connects them socially, whereas if they don't share that with somebody else, then maybe they're part of that out group.
Okay, so I think one of the questions that I can think of is that what makes each generation's slangs unique?
Yeah, so I think generations slang being unique, I think, well, language changes and it always changes and it always has changed. I think you hear a lot of people talk about how there's certain pieces of society or segments of society where they're maybe afraid that like, oh, the language is being lost, or it's changing in a way that is worse than it ever has been before. And I think that's always been a thing. People have always been afraid that the language somehow is becoming worse over time, and in reality language is always changing. And so I think there's a lot of factors that go into changing our language, and that can have to do with technology. It can do with society changing, all of those different things. So, for example, if you think about COVID-19 pandemic, right? We've all lived through that, but maybe Gen Z has a little bit different perspective on it because of their age group and what they've experienced. So they were that age when they were experiencing that specific thing. So that could give rise to certain perspectives and certain slang or certain ways of talking about it that that group might share, that maybe the older generations don't, or as enough time passes, there's going to be generations that would not have experienced that, and so they won't necessarily have that same kind of vocabulary or understanding of things and talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, like right now, like there's a lot of words that I look at, the slang, like skibbity, like I didn't know that word before. Um, do you think like in the future, maybe in like the next 10 year or 5 years or 10 years, you're gonna like not gonna understand what they talk anymore, the kids?
It seems that way. I mean,
Mm.
um, I think that, like I said, language always changes, but I think with the technologies we have today, it's sped up. It's so
Mm.
fast. A new term might come out and be gone before I ever hear about it. So I might hear about a term that's already like dead, right?
Mm.
Nobody says that anymore, even though they might have said it a couple weeks ago or something. So yeah, I can see where there's always going to be stuff that maybe I'm not as familiar with, and I mean that's just kind of how it goes, I guess. And
Yeah.
Um, During the introduction, we know that you have three daughters. Like, how old are they?
I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Oh, so
Oh.
those the kids that you have, Brother Maloney, are you kind of like, what's the right term? Not scared, but more like worried that they'll be able to like find slangs and use it more often to you, like as they grow up. Like, are you scared that you won't be able to catch up with them?
Yeah, like I'll try to communicate with them and they'll say things and I just don't understand.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess that could be a real concern. But I think the younger generation's pretty smart and they know, they kind of understand. I think the term we might use is they have an understanding of pragmatics and understanding of when certain language should be used and maybe not. So I think kids are smart, and when they talk to their parents, they may use certain slang I've never heard before, but then if I say I don't understand, they'll probably figure it out really pretty quick and try to help me out. Maybe, unless they're mad at me. Maybe then they won't.
Maybe they'll help you, Brother Maloney. In regards to generation, how does the slang reflect each culture of each generation? Like you coming from the millennial generation and us coming from
Gen Z?
Gen Z,
I don't
Gen
know.
Z, or
Maybe
not
Gen
the
Z, I
alpha
think.
maybe, but yeah,
Not the
around the
alpha.
Gen Z
Yeah,
generation.
we don't have the years in front of us right now to figure out exactly what we would be, but well, I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying a little bit ago. It's really kind of the experiences, with the changes in technology, the changes, historical events, things that happen in society, things that happen around the world. For example, it's not exclusive to millennials, but I think in the United States, especially in my generation, we all went through and lived through September 11th. Twin Towers attack, and how that is a kind of a shared experience that we all have, and a shared knowledge of that, and having lived through that, right? And I'm not saying that any particular language came from that, but just like big events like that can sometimes give rise to shared language or shared ways of talking or viewing things. And like as I said a little bit ago, like the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe for Gen Z, I mean, millennials lived through it as well, but kind of that unique perspective. So because you have that combination of factors, right? You have the age group as well as the technology and how people talk about everything, and it just all combines to maybe give a unique perspective, which then could give rise to unique ways of talking about things, which could give you new words or phrases, especially with technology. And social media is a big one. Like, I'm not a huge social media user, and I think maybe there's data out there, but I have a hunch that millennials may use social media a bit differently than Gen Z does. And I think that's a product of kind of just what we grew up with and what we were exposed to. And because I mean, the millennial generation, we grew up in using. Well, let me walk that back a little bit and say, like, I remember not having internet in my house. Like, that just wasn't a thing. I remember when we got internet installed into my house. It's like, and I feel like maybe many Gen Zers, maybe that's not a thing that they had to go through. I mean, of course, sure, in certain parts of the world, or in certain parts of the United States, even their experience might be different. But like a big reason why we didn't have internet in our house was because there just wasn't internet to be had in our house versus
Like there are some other ways that you can enjoy life, maybe not only through social media. And I totally agree with what you said, Brother Maloney, regarding how generation affects how the social media now affects like each culture of each generation. Because I feel like if without the precursor of each generation, like from Gen X, the baby boomers, the millennials, and now the Gen Z and like the alpha generation, maybe, I feel like without those things, or without those generations, we won't be able to evolve regarding slangs, maybe, because there are some things that, like what we had with the guessing game, we still have some things that we know from your generation, and then there are some things you know as well from our generation. So I feel like it's a way of like a bridging gap as well. And I feel like despite the differences of us using the social media and like using slangs, I feel like we have this bridge that we can like gap from language itself and from slangs, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I learned a lot today. Yeah, I like how you point out how like the language always changing, and I just look back to the history and how like like English, French, German, and they all like have some roots from like the same place in some way, and then all the word kind of like follow each other. And I think I see slang that way too when it's going to change in the future. It's just the situation that happened during that generation, and also the social media are gonna affect how they use the language in the future. But I think good thing that we have social media and the internet, so we can also like learn from the kids in the future if they're gonna use words that are like strange.
I think it's important to recognize. I mean, technology is a huge. On multiple ways. I think social media, because we are able to communicate with so many people so quickly, that has an impact on language. But also just these new social media apps that are coming out all of the time, and new technologies. We have to come up with words for them, and then we have to come up with words for using them. For example, Googling something, right? I mean, I was alive when that wasn't a part of our everyday vocabulary, right? And I mean, so technology kind of spurs a lot of change and new slang and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
On a more personal note, Brother Maloney, do you usually use slang? Like, on a particular group of people.
Yeah.
Because here in the university, you teach EAL 320, so it's more of an academic type.
Right, yeah.
Like writing and speaking. So, do you use it, like slang?
Well, that's a good question, because sometimes we don't know what we do regularly. We have to have maybe somebody else point it out. I would say that I think, when I go back home to where I grew up and I see the people that I grew up with and my good friends and things, I probably use more. But where I am now, maybe not as much. I don't know. Yeah. And there's also a concept of what we call register, and register is kind of the different levels of formality of language that we use. And there's an academic register or a professional register, and I work here most of my days during the week, and I try to maintain that level of professionalism, so maybe not as much, but maybe when I go home and talk to my family or my friends, then maybe you'll hear some more.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brother Maloney, for being here with us today to enlighten us more regarding slang and how we can create a bridge between different generations.
Okay, so thank you so much, Brother Maloney, for being here with us. And again, I've learned so much regarding this. I feel like I'm much more closer to the millennials now.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, thank you for having me.
And have you ever felt more connected with the Gen Z now?
Oh, definitely. Well, I'm finding out, I think, that I understood at least some of these terms that you brought forward. I'm more familiar with them than I thought. So maybe we're not as different as we may think.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so to our listeners, we want you to share your thoughts regarding today's episode and also today's topic.
Yes, and don't forget to follow Alaka'i's social media pages, whether on Instagram, Facebook, or even Spotify, where we post our podcast every Wednesday. We would love to see and hear your reactions and comments.
Okay, see you next week, guys. Thank
Bye.
you.
Mahalo.